This episode of Blue Please is brought to you in part by win-source.com, which is your source for entertainment, lols, fails, and apparently a lot of win to top it off. So I'm told. If you want entertainment, you came to the right source. Ah, the puns. Win-source.com. Yeah.
And so, it begins. Dark were the skies and chill was the wind as the land was covered in a veil of malice. Across the hill did ride a dread army of the night, cloaked in mist and fog, prepared to rain down death and destruction upon the land. And the people did crowd for a savior, a noble soul to save them from their impending demise. Just as it seemed all was lost, in strode a mighty hero, clad in shimmering metal from head to toe. Wielding a terrible broadsword, he did cleave his foes in two, smashing their ranks asunder with righteous fury. And when the day was done and the enemy strewn across the fields in pieces, the people did turn to the warrior and say, "We shall name this day in your honor. Speak unto us your wisdom." The warrior said one word that day: epic.
One man, one Murloc, one giant angry badger. This is Blue Please. It begins now. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the rescheduled Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com with myself, TotalBiscuit. The date today is the 28th of November 2010. It is 1 minute past 8 in the British Isles. It's 1 minute past 9 Central European summertime. That would also make it 1 minute past 3 on the East Coast and 1 minute past 12 on the West Coast. If you're anywhere else, then I don't cater to you because I'm discriminatory like that. What have I got coming up for you in the show today? Firstly, an apology, one for rescheduling this, and two for not making it absolutely clear that it was being rescheduled. That was a fairly dumb thing to do. I believe the only place that I did post it was actually on Facebook, which I'm well aware that some people read and some people do not. So that was my own fault. Very, very sorry about that. Should have posted it on the website, should have posted it on YouTube, you know the drill. Anyway, people can catch the archive, I am sure about that. What have I got coming up for you in the show today? Well, first things first, I'm going to give a big shout out to Slasher. Slasher, the famous Quake Live fellow. You should be aware of who Slasher is. If you're not, I'm going to give a shout out to him anyway. He was saying, hey, they're talking about you on the show that we're currently doing. Yes, indeed, the WOC. And I'm like, well, should I talk about you on this show? I don't really know how I can actually fit it in there. But hey, there you go. Big love to Slasher and all that nonsense with his Quake. Yes. He was saying I should cast Quake. Like, I don't know about that. It seems a little bit too complicated. Anyway, what have I got coming for in the show today? This is primarily going to be driven by your emails. I believe I already have enough, so you can stop sending them in now. I'm going to be giving away some games to those who sent me in good emails, just because I'm feeling in a generous mood. There's a great pack on Steam at the moment. It's called the Indie Puzzle Pack. It's got some amazing titles in it. Really, really good. And I'll tell you exactly what is in it. And I'm going to be giving one of these to everyone that sends an email in that is actually featured on this show. So you can continue sending them in if you so desire. I've picked most of them, but you never know. If you send in a really, really good one, then hey, I might read that one out nonetheless. I'm going to be basing this entire show on emails. Why? Because I haven't really had the time to play WoW this week, because I've been too busy with other stuff, like the DreamHack casting, which went really well, and I'm really, really happy about how that went down. It was great stuff. But I haven't really had a chance to do anything WoW-related. Obviously, the last WoW video I did and released, I believe, was on Tuesday, and that was for the Heroic Throne of Tides. I'm now concentrating on getting Azeroth Daily ready for its release, as well as working on leveling stuff. I'm going to be doing a video tonight, which is going to be leveling in Stone Talon. I have an old alt, a Shaman alt. It was quite amusing, actually, because I actually jumped in on this Shaman alt. I was looking through my servers, and it's like, I don't remember having a character on Defias, but I looked there anyway. anyway, and I found this level 25 shaman that I'd leveled up about 5 years ago and then never done anything with. And that was bizarre, because I log in and I'm sitting there with my crescent staff, and all of my abilities have reset. Half the abilities of my bar have disappeared. I've got to train another 10 abilities, and then I suddenly realised that all I've got in the world is 1 gold. I can only afford to train 3 abilities, so I have to go on Twitter and actually beg for gold in order to get this character up and running. Thankfully, that was provided by some generous individuals, so thanks for that. So I respect him. I spec'd him into enhancement because that sounded like a lot of fun. I went on the auction house and bought a couple of twink axes just because I couldn't find anything else. I've got the, what the hell is it? I can't remember. They're nice though. I think I've got some the razor's edge, and then some other axe, maybe the skull splitter or something like that. So I've got these 2 killer axes. I'm set up. I'm ready to go. I can't remember how to play a shaman because, of course, it was 5 years since I played the last one. Oh, man. It's going to be entertaining, though. Like I say, he's the perfect level for Stone Talon. Stone Talon's level 25 plus. That's exactly what my character is. He's level 25. Hell, I even had to run him down, all the way down indeed, to Senjin, because of course back in the day you couldn't get a mount on a level 25, you had to be level 40, so I ran him all the way down to Senjin to go buy my mount and said, oh wow, I've got a mount, isn't it fantastic? I have this little purple raptor I'm riding on. I'm very happy with it, folks. I'm very happy. Me enthusiastic about leveling. Oh god, how the hell did that happen? Anyway, I'm fairly sure I went off on a tangent there. I was going to tell you what was in this pack. So this indie games pack, if you don't win it, ladies and gentlemen, then you can buy it. It's only on today. So if you hear this show, I'll try and get this show uploaded as quickly as possible, but it's not expensive at all. At all, folks. This pack is £3.49 or about $5. It contains cogs, droplets, puzzle dimension, shatter, and Tidalus. Every one of those games is awesome. So for £3.49, that's absolutely nothing. I'm sorry, I'm just sitting on a weapon of choice at the moment that someone called in and asked what DJ Wheat thought of me. I have no idea. I've ever actually interacted with DJ Wheat at any point. I have this very, very tiny link to DJ Wheat a long-ass time ago. Very, very long time ago. What happened? I think DJ Wheat, I'm fairly sure, was either initially, because this is so long ago, about 6 years ago at least, he was either a part of WoW Radio before I came in, a very, very long time ago, when there was an initial split in the old school WoW Radio crew. A lot of them went to a company called ITG, and I'm fairly sure DJ Wheat ended up on there before going on that. So I think that's the only actual connection that I've got to him, and that's tenuous at best. Because, of course, I wasn't on WoW Radio when DJ Wheat was involved in it. Like I say, he was there briefly, I believe, and he bailed for ITG, and then ITG folded, and he went on to do other greater things. Crazy stuff. I have nothing but love for DJ Wheat, honestly. That's my personal opinion on the guy. Like I say, I've never had a reason to dislike him. Alright, well, okay, so we've had a look through that. Yep, like I say, all of these emails I'm going to be using today will be getting an indie puzzle pack over Steam, so I will email the guys who did send them in. If you are on for other games, by the way, and I imagine a lot of you are still playing WoW right now, but if you're not wanting to level up, then of course you might be looking for something to pass your time. There's a lot of good stuff on Steam today in the sale. You got 21 hours, 51 minutes to buy them. My pick of the litter would have to be Mount & Blade Warband, which is a medieval combat simulator and an open-world RPG. And yes, you get to ride around on horseback, lopping people's heads off with a giant curved bardiche. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, it's what you want, it's what you need. And, by the way, don't buy the pack, because there's no point in buying the original Mount & Blade, because Warband is basically the same thing, but better. So, there's literally no benefit to having it. Okay, folks, I think I've blithered on quite a lot about that, so what I will do is I will mention what's going on with Trollface. So, Trollface is now sitting at about 2,850 members. We're about to fill up the third guild. We've got quite a few actives. A lot of people still waiting on Cataclysm. We're going to be kicking out inactives a few days after the Cataclysm launch. So we'll see how many we have then. I mean, I fully expect to lose a very significant chunk of the guild. Honestly, I'd prefer we just had one guild with 1,000 active people in it, as opposed to 3 guilds with 3,000 sort of semi-active people. But hey, we'll see how that goes. Whatever the case, it's looking to be really, really good so far. Things have calmed down quite a bit. We've actually got this mod in called Guild to Guild, which allows us to communicate with the guild chat like we were all in the same guild. It's really neat. What happens is, if you've got the mod in, it syncs up with a secret passworded channel, and then it actually communicates, so it looks like everyone's in the same guild chat. If you don't have the mod, you get to see it anyway, because it's relayed through people. So it's really, really awesome. I'm a big fan of that, and it's actually very, very cool indeed. We've done really well with it so far. We've got the big vent server running, and everyone seems to be having a great time, and we're looking forward to seeing what we can do with Trollface as things go forward. We're also starting to form up our divisions. We have a few people who've started up their divisions, and they've put their sort of mission statement in there. What I'm going to be doing is I'll be forming Trollface forums on the Cynical Brit forums, and I've got a bunch of applications for division leaders. So those who applied basically are going to post up, and they're going to say what their division idea is, what they want to do, when they want to raid, and then people can just join the division they want that's most convenient to them. Now, this is the whole point of this guild, is the ability to do anything within it. So if you want to just do arena PvP, you can do that. If you want to raid 2 times a week at very specific times, I can guarantee you that you'll probably find 9 other people who are interested in doing that with you, that are sort of on your level of skill. So many options. Aside from that, that's about it, I think. Honestly, like I said, I haven't had a lot of chance to play WoW. I'm looking forward to going in and hitting up Stone Talon today. Should be good stuff. And without further ado, it is time for this.
Mail time!
That sounds like it's mail time. Here's the mail.
It never fails.
It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes,
I want to wail.
Yes, indeed, folks. This is mail time. It's a time where we read your mail, see? I have quite a few emails. Can I get game packs since I asked nicely? No, because that's begging, and that's pretty pathetic. Okay. I will mention this one very, very quickly. I just want to cover it, because it would be nice to just have a post-mortem on this thing. This is a StarCraft 2 related question. This one goes out from Sebastian Borg. No, not Johann Sebastian Borg. God, Johann Sebastian Borg. I don't know, if I was called Borg, I would be pretty happy with that. Whatever the case. How do you feel that, now that DreamHack is over, that it went, for my part? Aside from the technical problems and the excessive waiting, which were, fairly inevitable, that's just how tournaments work, I thought he was kind of the same thing. I was happy, mostly, with what I did. I mean, there were a few flub-ups that I annoyed with, and I always get annoyed if I ever make a major mistake like that, and I watch through my stuff afterwards to try and point out exactly what I did wrong and to improve on what I did for the next cast. That's the way to do it, as far as I'm concerned. That's the way to learn. It's how Blue Plays got to this stage. I listened back to all the other ones. I listen to them after they're done, and I will then actually take notes. And if I've made a particular flub up with my method of speech, if I've mispronounced a word or whatever, I'll try and write it down, and then I will have a look at it, and I'll see if there's a way that I can eliminate that from the future shows. Whatever the case, I was really happy with it. I had a really good time. It was an honour and a privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to cast something of that high level. I'm certainly not knowledgeable enough to do it, but the point of the fact is that people were entertained. So, casting is a weird thing, because people have a lot of different ideas about how it should be done. And in reality, none of them are right, but then again, none of them are wrong either. There are so many different ways of casting. I've said it before, and I can say it again until the cows come home and indeed take up residence on the sofa while eating TV dinners. It comes down to, 1, personal preference, and 2, the fact that sports casting is generally done as a team, and that team is generally arranged in a very specific composition. That composition is a play-by-play commentator, the kind of person that is able to call the action rapidly in an exciting tone of voice. They're usually the alpha personality of the group. They perhaps have the most broadcast experience. You'll find that a lot of these play-by-play commentators on American sports channels, they went to broadcasting school. They have a massive amount of experience in the field. And then you have analysts who perhaps are not as experienced in broadcast, but know a lot more about the actual game. They're big into it. They're the theory crafters. They're the theory guys. What they do is, after the big play, they will analyse it. They will give the post-mortem of that play. Then you've got the colour guy. Now, the colour guy is not, in fact, black, although he may very well be. The colour guy is the guy that throws in the stats, he throws in the useless information, and indeed he throws in the jokes and the funny stuff. And you can compose a team out of 2 to 3 of those kind of roles, but you've always got to have a play-by-play, you've always got to have an analyst guy. And if you don't have that, then your team doesn't really work very well. And we've seen casting in the past, casting teams, particularly with StarCraft 2 and indeed other esports, where you've got mismatches. You've got guys who are analysts matched with people who also try to be analysts, and it doesn't work out so well, and they're both trying to figure out exactly who's doing the play-by-play, so you end up talking over each other, and there's not this constant presence, and you don't get a rhythm going. It's more of you're fighting over the mic, basically. And that's bad. You never want to be in that situation. You try and rigidly define the roles of your casters. But anyway, like I say, a lot of StarCraft casting is done solo because it's hard to do it over the internet. In fact, I would never recommend it. And, it applies to everything, WoW esports included. WoW esports only ever happens in a live environment in an actual tournament. You can't cast it otherwise, and I have to wonder whether that's actually a deliberate decision by Blizzard. You never really know that. But yeah, that's why I cast solo, and it's not necessarily ideal because I do miss stuff, and it is a very specific kind of commentary. It is play-by-play it's play-by-play mixed with colour, but it's lacking analysis, and that's a weak point of it. But people still found it entertaining anyway, and that was the main thing. I got a lot of new viewers that way who didn't necessarily go in for my kind of casting, at least they didn't think they did, but they were getting into it anyway, and that was great to watch. Obviously the majority of people watched Day 9, as they should, and it was an honour and a privilege to even get a look in when he was casting. So yeah, it was awesome. Really, really big fan of that, and I'm hopefully going to be at DreamHack next time. It was supposed to happen this time, and I'm really sorry to the guys who wanted to meet up at DreamHack. It was supposed to happen. A bunch of things conspired to make that not happen. It was really unfortunate. It wasn't really anybody's fault per se, but it just didn't end up materializing, and like I say, I would love to do it, and I'd love to be there in person next time, and we'll see how that one goes. As far as I'm aware, DreamHack was really happy with it. They said they were absolutely thrilled with how it went down, so yeah, great. And again, thanks to everyone that actually watched that. I know that's not really WoW related, but it does explain, 1, why the show was not on Friday, and 2, of course, why there haven't been all that many WoW videos over the past couple of days, so I feel that's fairly relevant. What I will say, one criticism that I do have is the fact that there was supposed to be a live raid with Paragon there. Paragon were actually there, and apparently he never really got to do much. And it was supposed to be casted. It didn't happen. And I'm disappointed about that because I was told about it, and about a month ago I did contact a certain person at DreamHack to try and get it arranged and try and get me to do it, and that didn't end up happening, which was really unfortunate. I'm disappointed about that, and I'm sure Paragon is as well as all of the WoW fans. Hopefully they can get that sorted out for next time, and of course I'd love to get involved. My name is TotalBiscuit. You're listening to Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com. When I come back after the break, I'm going to be having the first of several listener-suggested topics. There will be rants, there will be some rage, perhaps, as you might expect. Now, what I'd like to play for you right now is from Machinae Supremacy's new album. This album blows away Overworld in, oh wow, it's just silly how good this album actually is. It's called The View from the End of the World, and you're going to love the title of this one. Do you ever play Half-Life 2, ladies and gentlemen? I'm sure you did, and if you did, you would be well aware of a certain combined detention facility called Nova Prospekt. That's the name of this track. It's by Machinae Supremacy, and I'll be right back after this. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Please. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on CynicalBrit.com.
It be another quiet night in the swamp, my friends. Time again to be channeling the powers of the voodoo, like Vol'jin taught us, and seeing into the mists of time. I see a place where the trolls of the future will go for the entertainment. A place called GotGame.com. By clairvoyance, I be seeing the horde favorite original shows like Game Nights TV, The Irate Gamer, Virtual Rob, The Swag Show, Gaming Mysteries, and something called Mr. Suck. These be the kind of things that would make the Darkspear proud.
GotGame.com is your video game source for entertaining and original videos, reviews, and more. Preferred by trolls everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Blue Please right here on CynicalBrit.com with myself, TotalBiscuit. Yes. Like I say, rescheduled and indeed entirely my fault for not properly telling people about it, but hey, there you go. By the way, we're not using the Tiny Chat today because it's mega laggy, so I would strongly suggest that you head on over to the IRC chat. There are a couple of options as to how to get there. You can use the on-site chat, which is in the top menu. Alternatively, you can just put the irc.quakenet.org #CynicalBrit into your favourite IRC program. That's the way to do things. Okay. So, someone pointed me in the direction of something I really, really like the look of. Indeed, this just popped up just before the show. I love 11th hour content, it's great. Alright, so this is called What Wrath Players Need to Not Suck at Kata. I'm going to go through this and see if I actually agree with it. This thread you can indeed read along with if you so desire. I've popped it into the Cynical Brit IRC chat room. You can see that. Alternatively, if you are listening to the podcast, this will be posted on the show notes, which are on cynicalbrit.com, and I'd recommend that you read those every time anyway. Now, this one is by a man called Data. No, not that kind of Data. He's not a sentient android as much as you might desire. With rather sickly yellow skin. It's like that guy had permanent jaundice. Either that or he played way too many video games with the blinds closed. Whatever the case. Data's pretentious how to better yourself after learning to play in Wrath Both incoming. Dare you read it and take its words to heart, or dare ye troll instead? One will fill me with warm joy and hope for the future, and other will simply amuse me, so let's get cracking. Release the Kraken. Anyway, so this guy's apparently been a regular WoW player in Raiders since Classic. He's tanked, healed, melee, ranged, and everything. And he has 11 out of 12 hard mode experience, and he is indeed a Cataclysm beta tester. He plays a Hunter, Death Knight DPS, Druid tank and DPS, Paladin healer and DPS, Shaman healer and DPS, and evidently has way too much time on his hands. But the question is, will his information be useful? We will find out, shall we? Okay. So, firstly, this one goes out to everybody. These are handy. Some of these might seem blindingly obvious to people, but I wonder how many of these have actually been ignored. I want to see, and I'm going to compare and contrast this to the experiences that I've had in Wrath with pubs and things like that, and pugs, as to what they miss, what they don't do, and things like that. Right. Firstly, everyone, be mindful of your positioning. Do the mobs have knockback? Will you get thrown into other mobs? Is the tank facing the mob away from the group in case it has a conal effect or a cleave? When trying to dodge the fire on the ground, are you running towards another group of mobs? These are things that you will need to be more mindful of in Kata. Extra pulse cannon will likely mean wipes, and any damage that can be avoided will make your healer's life much easier and make their mana last much longer. Indeed, this is actually very important, because healer mana is a massive, massive issue. You can't simply sit there for ages, absolutely ages, ladies and gentlemen, and just eat adds and eat damage and things like that, expecting the healer to have an infinite pool of mana. That's simply not the case. He doesn't. Indeed, his big heals, or indeed his rapid heals to save you from dying, will drain the crap out of his mana. I was doing some interesting comparisons, actually. I was looking at what my new Shaman has, or indeed my old Shaman. Got Healing Surge and Healing Wave. I can't remember which is which, but one of them is like 1.5 second cast. That is a big heal, but it costs 3 times the normal mana. And the other one is kind of rubbish, but is a very slow sort of heal. But it's interesting to see that in action, and indeed I saw it affecting us a great deal in the Cataclysm beta. It was hammering us into the ground, actually, on multiple occasions. It was problematic for everybody. So yeah, you're damn right you need to pay attention to that. Like I say, it seems obvious, but positioning is vitally important. It's like saying, oh, well, you can't predict where fire's going to be. Well, yes, that's true, but you can put yourself in a position where if fire does appear, you will minimize the damage that you end up doing not only to yourself, but to the rest of the raid if you do something incredibly stupid. Like, I'm gonna run away from the fire. Oh, yeah, the boss has also got an ability that might have a direct damage effect with an AoE explosion. I just ran right into one of my friends because my positioning was awful. Now, you'll be surprised how many times you see that happen on a wide variety of different frickin' encounters. Indeed, when I had the misfortune of pugging back before all of the nerfs happened to ICC, I ended up doing a pug for, what was he? Yeah, Deathbringer Sourfang. And the amount of people that was like, oh, I'm gonna run right into this, I'm running away from the things, and I'm gonna, you know, those nasty little flare things that come on the floor, those hell beasts, and I'm gonna run away from it, oh, I'm gonna run right into someone else, oh, look, he just did the AoE Blood Boil effect thing, and did massive damage, and got a bunch of stacks on his bar. Why? Because I'm an idiot, and I have no idea what positioning's all about. Yeah, sad. So much more important now. Even if it did affect fights like Deathbringer Sourfang, it's just way more important now, and yes, you do indeed need to pay attention to it. And also, something that seems blindly obvious, if you get aggro, run the offending mob to the tank, not away from him. Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people don't do that. This next point, communicate with your group. It doesn't matter if you've never seen these people before in your life. Ask who should CC. Ask the tank to pop his cooldowns because you know you have trouble healing the pole. Ask if you have questions about another encounter. But that might involve talking to people. I don't like it. Oh, please. It's a social game. It's a massively multiplayer, multiplayer online role-playing game. That means the role that you play is with others. And if you are not, in fact, talking to your group, you are a liability. There is a reason that I do not do groups with people I am not on Vent with. It's not to say that Vent is the only way to do it, but it's certainly a very significant one, a very useful one, and usually it is the best. Vent, Mumble, TeamSpeak, whatever the hell you damn well please. Just use it. For God's sake, use it. Now, what else do we have? He goes on to say, take and give constructive criticism. This won't work. It's totally true, but there's no way it's going to work. Because everything is a personal attack. Absolutely everything. If you say anything at all about anyone's playstyle, or indeed their opinions or anything like it is taken as a personal attack, and you want to know why? Well, there's two reasons. One, because there are people with extremely fragile egos that absolutely cannot accept when they're doing things wrong. But secondly, and this is fairly vital as well, something that you definitely should be paying attention to, the Bleeding Hearts made it this way. It's true. Is the Bleeding Hearts think that you are so special, everyone is a unique and beautiful snowflake, completely up above and immune to criticism. Because criticism is mean. No, it isn't. It's vital, indeed, to every walk of life. Consider it for a second. If you do not criticize, say you are a teacher, and you don't criticize somebody's bad work, how will they learn that it's bad? It doesn't necessarily mean you've got to call them a complete and total twat, but that's what criticism is. You don't understand. Criticism does not mean insult. It's not the same thing. Never has been. But bear in mind, of course, ladies and gentlemen, bear in mind that criticism can either be constructive or it can be unconstructive. And unconstructive criticism is effectively useless because that tends to be highly confrontational, and yes, often it is just an insult. You know, if I say your tanking sucks, that is criticism, but it is useless criticism because I have not provided a way for them to improve said tanking. I mean, consider it for a second. As cynical as I may be, I don't believe that people deliberately try to be awful. In fact, because of people's egos, they want to be good. They want to be good at the game because they want this imaginary e-respect and stuff like that. They want to be the very best. They want to be an absolute baller at the game. But they don't have the capability. Usually, the reason indeed, the reason that they don't have the capability is because nobody's told them any better. And if you just keep criticizing them and say, oh, you suck, then it doesn't work, you know? Generally speaking, it drives people into a mindset where they become even more closed off to any degree of suggestion, no matter how useful it happens to be. Now, a lot of the time, you can justify that because you don't have to teach people how to play the game all the time. In fact, you shouldn't ever actually be expected to do that. But if you think there is an easy fix, it's like, you know, if you did this way, it would be much better, then it would make your pug experiences an awful lot better. That said, of course, you shouldn't really be in a pug anyway. And constructive criticism should absolutely be part of guild experiences. There's no doubt about that. This is why you have officers to turn around and say, oi, you are not performing up to the standards that we desire and demand. So, we will help you get better, but you have to be willing to listen. Yeah, like I say, the Bleeding Hearts are just the anathema of everything that is good and progressive within WoW, and indeed in the world, actually. I will go as far as to say that. Am I going to get, I'm going to get a little bit political, because it's the Bleeding Hearts that cause all sorts of nonsense, you know? It just sort of sprang up to me the other day, and I was thinking about it because I noticed a post on Reddit about this, and it was about sort of like National Go Topless Days and stuff like that, basically fighting for the right to women to bare their breasts in public, just, you know, in the same way that men can go around with a shirt off, etc., etc. And I was thinking about it for a moment, and I just couldn't actually think of a single good reason not to, you know? I mean, seriously. By the way, if you're still on Tiny Chat, you are a massive tard. Get off Tiny Chat. We're not on Tiny Chat. God. Absolutely stupid. Like I say, it's Bleeding Hearts that caused that to happen. It's like, hey, think of the children, blah, blah. It's totally illogical. Children see, freaking toddlers, and obviously before that, babies, more to the point, see breasts. It's an entirely natural thing. But you might wonder, why am I talking about that? It's because it is an analogy, and indeed it is relevant for that, you know? It's completely relevant. It's the same kind of behavior. It's pervasive throughout all walks of life and in many, many different things. Right. What else do we have in this particular thing? We shall have a look. I've lost my post. There we go. Right, yes. Keep your group's best interests in mind. Pay attention to what is happening to your group members. Is a mob running for your healer or clothies? Root it, slow it down, stun it. Did you get an extra ad? Try and help them out. Yes. It's like, don't just get this stupid-ass tunnel vision. Yeah, that is what's happening an awful lot. This amazingly retarded tunnel vision. I must dips the target. I must dips the target. I must keep hitting it and dips the target. It is actually what people do. They come and end up being completely and utterly fixated on the thing with the skull on its head, and become oblivious to everything else. You thought the FOV in Modern Warfare 2 was bad? The FOV of your average pugger WoW player is even worse. They've got an FOV of about 10 degrees, this field of view at 10 degrees, and solely the only thing in it is that mob, and they're blinking to everything else. It's pretty bad. Ugh. Be patient. This is all new content. Your group is in leveling gear, not top-tier epics. The fights are generally not easy. You have new mechanics to learn. Well, this I don't really necessarily agree with, because you should be doing this in guilds anyway. Like, in pugs, yeah, people are going to rage out about a bunch of stuff like that. But you should be in a guild. Why would you not be in a guild? There's no reason. There is literally no reason not to be in a guild. And don't give me this nonsense about, I don't have time. It's like, you know how many casual guilds there are? Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? There are so many available. So many. So the patience really should be a non-issue, because guild groups will be able to work through that content anyway. And what else? Be observant. Check out new buffs, debuffs, etc. Yeah, you can't really not to that. And of course, consumables. Yes, that's right. Health potions, mana potions, potions of speed. But mostly health and mana. Have them. Use them liberally if you have access to them. Mana potions in particular give healers the extra mileage they need in a tough fight. And just bear in mind, folks. Just bear in mind that a lot of people just don't want to invest because they're tight-ass, stingy Scotsmen. Wait, not Scotsmen, yes, WoW players. Sorry, it's an easy mistake to make. They don't want to spend any money, especially if they're in a pug. It's like asking people to flask in a pug, for instance. You'll get flamed out of the group. Why don't you use a bot? It's like, oh, I died. Why did I die? It's like, well, you know, you could have saved yourself there with a potion, right? But it costs money! Oh, please. Anyway, I don't need to really go through the rest of it. There's obviously tank stuff specifically in. But, yeah, it's pretty accurate, honestly. Pretty damn accurate. My name is TotalBiscuit. You're listening to Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com. I will be back right after this break with another user-submitted topic. And in the meantime, I think I shall play some Ensiferum. It goes by the name of Sword Chant. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Please. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on CynicalBrit.com.
Friend, I've got what you need! A premium quality Ventrilo server from UGTservers.com! It's goblin engineering, you see. Not like those inferior gnome products, always backfiring. If you're short on cash, you can even share the cost of the server with Guild Deposit. Have those lazy guildies of yours pay their dues. You know, I can offer you this amazing electric cattle prod that'll really get them moving.
UGTservers.com. Voice communication for your guild. Get yours today. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit, and you're listening to Blue Please right here on CynicalBrit.com. Well. We're looking at some more stuff that was submitted by the community. Like I say, I'm giving away these indie packs. I will contact you via email if you submitted the question. Valamir, rage-faced Scotsman comment. You mad, bro? You mad? He sounds mad. Do you think he's mad? I think he's mad. Oh, man. It's fairly hilarious. Oh, dear. I'm going to offend at least one major ethnic group every show. Yes, now it's got to an ethnic group. Okay. Well, there's another thread that I'd like to tackle right here that someone suggested, and it's like, barely even had to say anything about it. Just had to send it in, and then the rage. So, it's called the number of flight points worries me. Here's a few examples for Horde-side, says Kazelhoff. Stone Talon Mountains has 5 flight points, a whopping 10 if you count both sides. Western Plaguelands has 6 flight points. Felwood has 4 or 5. Totally looks like casual craft. Hey. It kind of takes the world out of World of Warcraft if you can literally flight point everywhere. There should be some traveling. There is traveling. Remind me if I can flight point into the area where my mobs are in order to kill them. Because last time I checked, it actually takes quite a long time to cross some of those zones. Indeed, Stone Talon Mountains is goddamn enormous. Have you seen the size of that zone now? It is freaking huge. Felwood had like 1 flight point. 1, as I recall, back in the day. And it was horrible. Really bad. Western Plaguelands, 6 flight points. Yeah, I can totally understand why that would be. It's like, totally looks like World of Casual Craft. Okay. So, I have to ask, why people like this actually think this way. I've always been trying to figure it out. But, as it turns out, I can't work it out. I think that they just have this desire to see everything, absolutely everything, as some kind of slight on their pro-gamer honor. That has got to be it. What other explanation is there? I don't recall there being any kind of explanation that would apply here. I don't think so. Let's consider it for a second. So, a casual player. What is a casual player? Well, the most commonly accepted definition by people who aren't clinically retarded would be a casual player is somebody who plays when they have the time, not necessarily on a specific schedule. If you have a schedule for WoW, in my opinion, you're not actually a casual player, because you are deliberately scheduling parts of your day to play a video game. You are not a casual player if you are able to do that. The casual player is the kind of player that logs in when he has the time. Like, if I log in at a specific time every day, I'm not a casual player, even if I only play for 10 minutes. That doesn't make me casual. Casual players are people that just like, oh, right, I just happen to have some spare time now. You know, I haven't planned it, but I'm going to log into WoW anyway. I'm casually playing this game. The nature of the game is that it's pick up and play. This is why most casual games, they're not necessarily easy. I mean, try some of the ridiculous stuff on Peggle. It's actually really hard to get all of the stuff on Peggle. But it's a pick up and play game. As in, you don't have to dedicate a significant portion of time to actually get anything out of it. That's it. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, technically, there are times when I've been a casual player, but aside from that, it comes down simply to the fact that if I want to raid, then generally I'll want to actually schedule it. Now, when it comes down to this, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Are you saying that only casual players use flight points and that hardcore players deliberately ride everywhere? Are you suggesting perhaps that hardcore players don't use 100% speed ground mounts because that's too casual? You know, they use the old school 60% speed ground mount. Or indeed, the really super hardcore players just walk everywhere, not run, they actually press the walking key. Because that doesn't happen. Hardcore players, in fact, benefit significantly from this because they are about efficiency. And they will plan their routes, and they will use the flight points at their disposal to make sure that it is the most efficient thing possible. That doesn't make the game casual, that's in fact quite the opposite. It benefits everybody. It doesn't benefit casual players any more than hardcore players. At all. Why would it? Think about it. It just... Come on, really? I don't know where this guy gets off saying things like that. It's such nonsense. The problem is that this kind of thing gives hardcore, quote-unquote, players a bad name. Yeah? Because hardcore players are seen as a bunch of whiny elitists. And any feedback they give is like, oh, you're just hardcore elitist whiner. No, it's like, shut up. But then you have to understand exactly why these people think this way. They think this way because there are people on the other side that are equally, if not more, stupid. This guy being a prime example of that. There should be some travelling. There is. And you can do it, if you so desire, on the back of a flying mount. Or if you really don't want to, you can ride it. There is nothing stopping you. It's like, he's using that. Do you hate mages? I have to ask a question here. Do you hate mages? Or indeed do you hate, say, shaman? You know, with their astral recall? Because mage is the most casual class in the world. Oh my god, we can teleport. No travelling. When was the last time I actually travelled anywhere? Not really. When I was raiding, the last thing I wanted to do was waste time travelling. Summoning stones. The most hardcore guilds use summoning stones, of course. Oh, that's so casual. That's so casual. They should all be traveling. It's just garbage. It's absolute dross. It's utterly illogical. There's no sense in what this guy is saying. None. I wonder, did he rejoice when the change was made to remove portals from Dalaran? Or did he indeed join the throng of people whining about it? I am willing to believe that he joined the throng of people whining about it. Seriously, it would not surprise me in any way if he did. Like I say, people like this are hypocrites. It's as simple as that. They absolutely are 110% hypocritical in this regard. And that is just incredibly stupid, isn't it, when you think about it? And I suppose it brings up an interesting point and an interesting question inadvertently, and that is, what elements of the game do you consider to be hardcore and what elements do you consider to be casual? What swings the game in one direction or the other? What I would say is that if you were to, say, take all of the flight points out of the game, would that actually stop casuals from enjoying it? The answer actually is no, it wouldn't. If anything, it would waste the time of hardcores more, because hardcore players are on a schedule. This is true, they have a schedule. That's what makes hardcore players hardcore. Because they are willing to schedule their life around a video game. Whereas, in the case of casual players, the game has to be fit in somewhere with their real life, and that fitting in is often very irregular and often unplanned. So, for a hardcore player, let's say there were less flight points. Let's just say, for instance, that we took his argument and we said, right, okay, well, obviously, Blizzard paying attention to this post, you can see them there. You've got Mike Morhaime in there, you've got, obviously, Chris Metzen's trying to come up with the lore for the fact that suddenly there are no flight points anymore, and he comes out with some kind of cosmic rays, there's solar flares, solar winds, massive microwave radiation that's causing anything that flies and need to just fall out of the sky in a ball of flames, Icarus style. So he's coming up with that and possibly eating magic mushrooms at the time just to make either take away the pain of having to do it or just make more sense in his head, And then Mike Morhaime sitting there with a very stern look on his face reading this post, and he's handed out this dossier to all of the really, really important people. And the dossier is nothing but a printout of that particular forum post, and they're saying, gentlemen, this is a disaster, we must deal with this ASAP. And if that were the case, and his argument were the case, then let's take all the flight points out of WoW and look who complains the most. The answer will be the hardcore players, because their time is wasted. Now, a prime example would be back in the day when summoning stones did not exist, and indeed when summoning portals did not exist, and you had to fly. There are certain areas, for instance, as the Horde getting to Molten Core and Blackwing Lair was something of a pain in the ass. Hearthstone in Kargath, I remember having to do that. Getting down to Silithis was pretty much a gigantic pain in the ass. Where's the nearest main travel hub to Silithis? Can you think of it? Yeah, because it's Thunderbluff. That was the way back in the day. Right, okay, great, I've got to go to Thunderbluff to get down to Silithis. Silithis flight, I believe, from Orgrimmar was something like 15 minutes. And that is a huge amount of time spent and indeed wasted. So, when I was hardcore raiding Silithis, there are a few things that I had to bear in mind. Bear in mind, it was 40-man raid, so summoning tended to not happen, because, of course, you don't want your Warlock burning soul shards that it needs for other things. This was back in the day when all of this convenient stuff didn't happen. So, alright, I'm burning soul shards because your lazy ass can't get here. Right, okay, so if my raid is at 1900, then I have to be on the flying mount before quarter to the hour. Because I've got to fly there. The main flight point and travel hub, if I recall, at that point in Silithis was the main town area. So then I have to ride all the way over to Anchorage, which is another good few minutes, 5, I think, on a mount. And then I've got to consider the possibility that I might get ganked in the meantime because I'm on a PvP server, so that I've got to allow additional time for in order to make sure that my raid starts on time. So if I were to take flight points out of the game, or if I were to have less flight points, instead of just having a flight point directly to Anchorage or whatever, or have flight points and direct travel hubs to various areas, just bear in mind, by the way, that having more flight points doesn't make flying any faster. Flying is at a specific speed. What I'd say now, probably, that flying is faster specifically for one reason, and that reason is that they now no longer have to avoid these areas that were actually non-existent. You know, because a lot of the areas in old school World of Warcraft were, in fact, as many of you might be aware, especially if you've seen those exploration videos, and on private servers, model viewer, map viewer, things like that, they just weren't there. It was cardboard scenery. I mean, half of the Undercity, for instance, didn't have an outside. Why? Because there was no way you would ever get to look at it. So they didn't bother putting it there. It's the same with Orgrimmar. Most of Orgrimmar was two-dimensional. Because, again, there would be no situation. You could have your flying out of the flight points go a very specific way to avoid unfinished areas, things like that. Like I say, this kind of thing is very much detrimental to proper, rational, sensible discussion. And the problem is, it's an epidemic. People are this dumb very, very frequently on a wide variety of different mediums. WoW forums all over the place, whether they be official or otherwise, are clogged with this nonsense. People that take these things and go massively over the top with them and are not remotely rational about them. And it is damaging. Because the people who are actually sensible and willing to debate things properly and can actually come out with a conclusion at the end of it, you know, a meeting of the minds, as it were, something that would be useful feedback, constructive criticism to Blizzard, it doesn't happen because they can't be arsed dealing with idiots like this. And can you blame them? Absolutely not. Why do you think I don't post on these bloody forums anymore? I have my own personal platform to tell people how stupid this is. Because I'm sick to death, the back teeth indeed, of trying to argue with brick walls. Brick walls made out of bricks of pure, unrefined, raw stupidity. And I can tell you for a fact that is not a solid foundation for a reasonable discussion. My name is TotalBiscuit, and you're listening to Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com. When I come back after the break, we'll be going through some more listener-submitted topics. In the meantime, I would quite like to play something. We're going to have to do... Yeah, I know exactly what we're going to have to play. You know what I've got to play. Sadly, folks, Nocturnal Rites has it correct in this one. Fools never die. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Please. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on CynicalBrit.com. Yes, indeed, folks. You are listening to Blue Please here on CynicalBrit.com. I'd like to make a quick point that was brought up in the IRC actually during the music break that I think does need to be addressed. If you recall, this is something that people are actually falling for, and it's becoming one giant meta-troll, which is rather odd. The original trollface.jpg. Yeah? You remember that one? The original trollface.jpg was an image designed to explain exactly what was going on with people that posted dumb stuff on the internet and then tried to play it off as trolling. Yeah? In the case of what we have right now is that people make this assumption now that every dumb thing on the planet has got to be a troll. So I'm going to post this, actually. This is a very, very good description. Obviously, this came from 4chan originally. It is not Cool Face. If you believe otherwise, then you are horrendously mistaken. You know, real trolling You're posting intentional logical fallacies, you're trying to get a reaction out of them, but in reality, the vast majority of people are actually just posting something incredibly stupid, and then, rather than then claiming it's trolling, we now have other people claiming it's trolling on their behalf, which is unbelievable when you think about it. It's absolutely ridiculous. No, actually, people are genuinely that dumb, and if you want proof of that, it's very easy. You just go to YouTube, pick any random video with more than 1,000 views, and I can guarantee you that there is someone in that comment section that is saying something genuinely, unironically dumb. Without question. Without any degree of question. So just bear that in mind. When you say, oh, this has got to be a troll. No, people are actually not that smart. Not everyone is some amazing manipulative puppet master, creating anger and violence and manipulating people into saying really ragey things over the internet from behind a giant curtain. It's not the freaking Wizard of Oz here, people. People are actually just stupid. It's as simple as that. You have to accept that. It comes down to Occam's razor, ladies and gentlemen. What is the most likely? What is the simplest, most likely possibility? It's not, in fact, that this dumb comment is actually some crazy manipulative conspiracy done by some hyper-intelligent troll over the internet. Actually, Occam's razor dictates that it is just them being dumb. Anyway. Shall we get on with it? Sounds like a good idea. I want to do this one because I like it. This is from one of our trollface.jpg members. He goes by the name of Jews. Yes, I kid you not. Jooze. Jews. So you can't tell me that I'm hating the Jews. Thank you very much. His real name's Andrew, by the way, if you so desire. A while back, you discussed the idea of having raid dungeons such as castle and fortresses, in which players had to choose one of multiple paths to take in order to increase the dynamic feel of the dungeon and increase its longevity. While I was thinking this idea over, and how would you feel about a meta dungeon themed like a castle or fortress in which there are multiple entrances? Nothing in the everything in the IRC is like, TB, stop hating the Jews. Oh, God. Trollface.jpg, quite frankly. Each entrance would be a different assault on the keep. For example, entering via a sewer system at the back of the keep would have the raid break in the back and disable the security systems, while going straight in the front door would be a simple fight through the keep's army. The different entrances would have different difficulties, but a shared raid lockout, i.e. you can only go in one entrance per lock, allowing hardcore guilds to go straight for the hard mode option, new raiders to go for the easier, simpler route, and depending on how many entrances Blizz puts in, varying degrees of medium. In this example, each of the routes could eventually meet a final boss whose difficulty varies depending on which route the raid took. I was thinking about this considering the first raid to be released after Cataclysm will be Sulfuron Keep. Well, technically it's the Firelands, but the entrance is supposed to be in Sulfuron Keep. We're just not actually 100% sure about it. What are your thoughts on this? Well, it comes down really to investment of time, and if you can justify making a dungeon whereby you don't see all of the bosses every week. And actually, in my opinion, yes, you, without a question, could. But, if you think about it, the new flexible lockout system might throw a spanner in the works of that. I'm not entirely sure how they would work it. There's a few possibilities. I mean, the way that I would do it, for instance, is maybe make 3 routes that have entirely separate bosses and then an end boss at the end. But again, it comes in at sort of time invested, because you want to be able to give enough content for people to do on a weekly basis. Because if they burn through the content in one night, then that's problematic. Because say if you take a 13 boss dungeon, yeah, let's take this idea. So you've got 3 different routes with 4 bosses, and then the end boss is always the same every time, yeah? If you, let's just say you had that, for instance. That's a fairly extreme example. And I would expect, if there were multiple entrances, I would expect 1 or at maximum 2 unique bosses for those entrances, and then for it to all merge together. I've made suggestions about this before, way back in the day, actually during TBC, when the announcement for the Black Temple first came out. They made a claim that this was a non-linear dungeon, which it isn't. At all. And people are saying, oh, well, isn't that just Naxxramas? No, it's not. Naxxramas wasn't non-linear either. Black Temple wasn't non-linear either. Because what we're talking about here is something where you cannot do all of the bosses in 1 week. When you go through one route, it locks off the other. So there are bosses within the dungeon that you do not kill every week. That's what we're talking about right here. We are discussing the idea of mutually exclusive boss routes and whether or not that would actually give you any kind of variety, and indeed whether or not it would stop you from getting so burned out on content so quickly. But again, you have to balance that with the possibility that it may take too long, and that also, if Blizzard release a dungeon that is, you know, let's just say, again, we go back to our old example of 3 routes with 4 bosses and an end boss, so you're looking at a total of 13. If those 4 bosses can be killed in an hour and a bit, and then you've got your last boss, versus a dungeon whereby it would take you 4.5 hours to clear the entire thing, you are asking people, and indeed you're asking the more hardcore end of raiders who have a lot more time in their hands and just want to raid everything that is possibly available, to have less content to raid. However, I think that we've probably reached the point where that would be acceptable, and the reason is quite simply this: hard modes, and the competitive nature of hard mode raiding. 1, it gives more opportunities for people to actually get firsts on particular bosses, but it makes the last boss the biggest race, yeah? Say, you can have the honour of getting a world first on a boss that, say, Insidia couldn't go and do the first week, and that's actually alright, you know? There's nothing wrong with giving people that kind of choice and giving people that kind of variety, but of course, the boss that really matters is always going to be the end boss, and it always was. There are a couple of exceptions. Like, say, Heroic Putricide was a good exception because it really nailed people to the floor for a very long time, whereas the other heroic content after the Lich King went down got steamrolled in a matter of minutes. For obvious reasons, because the Lich King on normal mode is harder than pretty much everything up to Putricide on Heroic, which is incredibly stupid, I might add. But there you go. Oh, we're just beating this guy. Oh, now we've got to do like 6 or 7 bosses that are not as hard as him. Woot! No, that's bad. That's incredibly bad design. You never want that to be the case. However, does it justify time investment? Because eventually, it's going to come down to, well, you know, this week we do this, and this week we do this, and we know all 3 routes. How much extra would you get out of it? It's a great idea, and I think they should actually do it once. Yep. I don't think they should do it all the time. Maybe to a lesser degree. Maybe have a choice of bosses for the first way in the way that you go in. But here's the thing, Blizzard is actually deathly afraid of one thing. What they're afraid of right now, and this is something they need to get over, because guilds are not democracies, and there are no successful guilds that are democracies to the best of my knowledge. They're basically dictatorships, yeah? The leadership says jump, and you ask them how high and how much DKP you will receive for doing the jumping. And that's actually how it operates. It works. Without a question, it does work, and it's the only way that it works. You have a strong leadership for your team, you do not have a democracy. Democracies are messy, democracies are inefficient, and you'll never get anywhere that way. At least in terms of gaming. We're not going to get political on this, but hey, there you go. Blizzard is deathly afraid of the reality of what guilds actually are. Yeah? And it's weird, because they have this bizarre idea of what guilds are, and that idea is incorrect. They believe that every guild member has a say, and that if there is disagreement within a guild as to what should be happening, there'll be massive drama. In reality, this will not be the case, because it will be the leadership that decides. Which is the reason... This is the reason that you have the removal of guild talents. They are gone for one specific reason. They were terrified of having guilds make a choice of their own. So they made every guild the same. As long as it, of course, farmed enough points every day. So every guild is now identical. I'm surprised, actually, that they even let you choose the name in Tabard, because you know what? I don't like that Tabard! Drama. Oh, please. Come off it. Really? If people leave guilds because of that, that's a good thing. It's pretty horrible. It is an awful idea, but making guilds make a choice between certain pathways in a dungeon is something I think Blizzard is absolutely terrified of. I don't think they have the necessary backbone to make that decision right now. I might add that this thing has existed before. I would like to point out the case, and indeed I believe there were a couple of other cases as well throughout the history of WoW raiding, the case of the Bug Trio in AQ40. The Bug Trio could be killed in 3 different ways, and it would drop different loot every time. Some of them were harder than others. It was actually one of the first examples of hard modes. It wasn't the first, because Zul'Gurub, I believe, was the first example of a hard mode in raid environment. At least a non-contrived one, where you say, oh, well, we're just going to do it with 30 people. Now it's hard. No, that's not what a hard mode is. The Bug Trio, Vem, Kree, and Yauj were the name of those particular. They were actually, like I say, an optional boss. But, yeah, they were kind of like the Iron Council. Kind of. What would happen, and this was a very, very cool trick. I loved the way that they did this. The way that they justified them having different loot was that once one of them died, the other 2 would eat the one that was on the ground. So the corpse would actually be eaten by them. So there would be no loot because the guys just ate the loot. So the final remaining bug would be the one whose loot you got. It was pretty awesome. I loved it. But you had to make a choice there as to which... And you know what? Yes, there were debates. Yes, there were disagreements. But it didn't wreck guilds. That was the point. There might be disagreements like, oh, well, you know what, I would have really liked my piece of loot from this week, but okay, I don't get it. That's fine. You know, only the most crybaby people would believe that. I've got one person in the IRC who's blatantly trolling. AQ40 suck. No, you're a noob. Get out. Wrath babies. Freaking awesome instance in basically every respect. Packed to the brim with great trash and great bosses. Really epic scale to it. Very well designed. Some stuff that honestly hasn't actually been repeated, and the mechanics are only just now starting to be recycled. Freaking amazing. But yeah, I would love to see a dungeon like that. It does, again, come down to time invested. Can Blizzard make the dungeon in a reasonable amount of time? Will it take a ton of time to do it? If it will, and you have to wait ages and ages for it, then it might not be worthwhile, because at the end of the day, it is a little bit of a gimmick, but it is something I would like to see Blizzard experiment with at least once. You know, every time they say, oh, we're going to have a non-linear, it's never actually the case. You know, Black Temple is not non-linear. Nax is not non-linear. And hell, you know, even a dungeon like this is technically not non-linear, but it's significantly more non-linear than the other stuff. You know, doing bosses in a different order isn't necessarily non-linear. In fact, it definitely isn't. Doing different bosses every time actually does add to the variety, and you can justify having this one dungeon in there. It's like, oh, wait, it's a variety pack. We choose on a weekly basis. But again, that involves Blizzard actually getting the balls to put the power back into the hands of the actual guild leaders. Which is where the power of decision should be, I might add. If they take that away, then why do you have guilds anyway? Guilds have to be led. That's how they work. My name is TotalBiscuit. You are listening to Blue Please right here on CynicalBrit.com. We'll finish off after the break with some more emails. And like I say, anyone who did contact me today with emails that have been read out on the show does win an indie puzzle game pack, which I will provide. So drop me an email and I'll get you your stuff over Steam. In the meantime, I should play some wondrous music. There is a band that I have not played in a very, very, very long time. Incredibly long time, in fact. I think the first time, and indeed the last time I ever played this, was in Season 1 of Blue Please, and somehow these guys actually fell off my radar. They are the cheesiest. They are awesome. They are called Terasbetoni, ladies and gentlemen. The name of this particular track is difficult to pronounce, but I'm going to try it anyway. It's called Maailma, tarvitsee, sankareita. Enjoy. You're listening to the podcast, an archive of Blue Please. Music was removed to comply with copyright law. If you'd like to hear the music, tune into the live stream on Fridays at 8 p.m. GMT. That's 3 p.m. EST, only on cynicalbrit.com. Yes, indeed, folks. You are tuned into Blue Please right here on cynicalbrit.com. We're going to cap off with a couple more emails, I think, and then we should do some shout-outs and end the show. I imagine I'll have a lot more to talk about next week, because that will be the 3rd of December. It's about 4 days away from Cataclysm launch. What I will say, and this is a reminder to everybody, I'm going to be at the Cataclysm launch party in Leicester Square in London on the 6th of December, on the evening, obviously, because that's when it's going to be. So, that is on the Monday. If you are going down to the launch party, I will be there. It will not be hard to find me. I will be wearing the grandest top hat. You may see others in top hats. They will be inferior, I can guarantee. My top hat is the best top hat. Will not be hard to find me at all. So I'll be happily meeting up with as many people as possible there. I will be at the press event that is happening beforehand, but yeah, I am going to be down there. So if you are going down to the launch party down at Leicester Square in London, then please, by all means, come and say hello. Shouldn't be too hard to see me in the crowd. You just see this giant top hat sort of swinging around above the heads of everybody else. Right. Couple more emails, I think. Sounds like a pretty good idea. It's a nice short one right here. It comes from Valette on Skywall US. Dear TotalBiscuit, having played World of Warcraft for some time now, what is one defining element of the game, other than poor game content and scrubs, that you would have changed to improve gameplay? It's a good question. I think the answer, honestly, would be to bring in multiple difficulty levels a hell of a lot earlier. And by multiple, I do not mean 2. I mean more than 2. I mean DDO level of stuff right here. As in the ability to enter a dungeon under multiple difficulty levels, perhaps even going to the point where you can possibly solo it. Now, honestly, it comes down to thinking about exactly how the game would work. I mean, DDO, for instance, is a hell of a different game. You've got a option to solo a lot of content in DDO, right? You can solo dungeons and things like that, and that is a lot trickier to actually deal with, and that might not work within WoW. WoW doesn't work the same way. WoW is very firmly in the tank, healer, DPS holy trinity, as they call it. As to whether or not you could possibly put a solo mode in, I don't know, honestly. And bear in mind that you can chug potions and things like that in DDO to keep you alive. Whether or not there should be a Diablo-style chugging potion mode, maybe. There's just plenty of other MMOs that have done it. You know, maybe in the solo mode dungeon, you can buy these potions that only work in solo mode dungeons, and you chug them at a specific time. And yeah, it's like I said, it's doable, but what it comes down to is that for the longest time there have not been choices, and as a result of there not being choices, what we've had are giant swings in the way that content is designed, because Blizzard is designing content based on subscriber numbers and what they think the majority of their subscribers actually want in order to stay subscribed to their game. Now, if from the very start there were difficulty levels on almost everything, maybe, hell, you would even have heroic versions of quests, for God's sake, that are harder or have additional optional objectives, something that I've never actually seen within the game. I don't really know why that is. Think about that for a second. Why can't you have optional difficult objectives to quests that yield additional rewards? There are so many games that actually use that concept. You can link them into achievements, you can link them into extra loot, extra gold, extra experience. A lot of different MMOs do it. it's an extremely good idea, and again, that gives people a choice to do things in a different way, and maybe they want to do something in a more hardcore manner, maybe they want to make questing a little bit more difficult, and how they do it is by throwing in these additional optional objectives. That's something that exists in a wide variety of different games, both MMO and otherwise. Well, you can do the quest, but also if you do it this way and with a little bit extra, then we will give you extra loot, or we will give you something cool or whatever. Again, that integrating multiple levels of difficulty into every part of the game is what makes the game successful. It is the way. Without a doubt, it is the way that you make your game appealing to everybody. At least as many people as possible. You know, there are some people that will never try WoW and actually hate WoW in its current form, and I don't really blame them for that, but it comes down to making sure that people are interested and engaged, because if they have something that engages them, they generally don't whine and complain and stomp their feet and try to have things changed in their favour. I think that the introduction of heroic modes was too little within Wrath, because what we've seen there is, well, we're going to try to appeal to these two groups of people, thinking that there are only actually two camps within the World of Warcraft player base, which of course is a massive mistake. There are far more than that. That is blindingly obvious to anyone with any common sense. So, would you necessarily build your content around that idea? Well, for the last 2 years, yes, you would. That is what Blizzard has done. They've built their content around the concept that there are only two groups of people, and if you don't fall into those two groups, whether or not it be the people that just want to, struggle with the normal modes, who are very bad at the game, or people that deal with the heroic modes, which are often such a massive leap up in difficulty, obviously depending on what you're looking at, it does vary from boss to boss, but you've got these massive amounts of people stuck in the corner, and then you look at the idea of normals and heroics. Normals and heroics were actually introduced in TBC and not Wrath. I mean, the heroic raiding came in Wrath, but heroic dungeons came in TBC. And there, even then, while I liked the concept was still a little bit flawed, because in the case of many dungeons, it was, well, would you like to do it this way, or would you like to do it in the way that is going to break your balls against a large anvil repeatedly with a hammer made out of lava and spikes? Because that's what's going to happen if you go into heroic Alcatraz, for instance, or for many people, heroic old Hillsbrad. Oh, wow. Yeah. Mucho paino, ladies and gentlemen. Nasty. Yeah, from the very start, I would have liked to see multiple difficulty levels. I think that would have stopped an awful lot of the bad decisions that have happened over the past 6 years, because, honestly, people would not have stomped their feet and tried to get things changed for their playstyle if their playstyle was already catered to begin with amongst everyone else's playstyle. Okay, we'll see if we can do one more email, and then we'll do shoutouts, and then we can end the show. What do we have? There's quite a few coming in right here. This is an interesting one. Comes here from Philip Dunbar, and he says, Dear Lord Biscuit of Trollface, like yourself and many other Blue Please listeners, I agree that using the point system to buy previous tier sets, making things much too easy, is a gateway to bad players to get gears for raids. However, you did mention that the reason Blizzard was doing this is because only about 8% of the player base was experiencing the final tier of raid bosses. How do you fix the system so that more people would get to the higher tier of raids, while still having it necessary, or much more favourable, to do each lower tier raid as opposed to just farming heroics? And do you think that with the difficulty of Cata heroics, the bad players won't even get the basic gear because they can't overcome any sort of challenging content, thus making the buying of tier sets with points being less of an issue? Yeah. You know what the really sad thing is? Probably one of the best ways to make people go back into those dungeons, in combination with a lot of other stuff, is to actually bring attunements back. And I hate saying it because I disagree so strongly with the idea of attunement. The fact of the matter is that there were raids all the way up until the end when they took the attunements out for places like Serpent Shrine, places like Tempest Keep, and indeed even the Tier 4 stuff. Karazhan continued to be raided to get attunements, to get things like that. I don't necessarily agree with it. In fact, I really actually strongly disagree with it. I believe that you should be able to take on any content that you actually have the skill for. But here's the problem. Without attunements, we've seen exactly what's happened. Without attunements, we now have a situation where Blizzard is going to say, right, well, you know what, all of these dungeons are basically dead because the latest tier of content is out and everyone's now bored of it or whatever. So you've now got these guys who can't get into this stuff. They can't get into these dungeons because they don't have the gear. It's a catch-22 situation, you know? There's a couple of other contrivances that you could put in to avoid this that wouldn't involve having attunements or whatever. I've said this and mentioned it before, and I'm talking about the idea of raiding heirlooms. The idea of being able to raid with your main to get stuff for your ult. That would be something that I would strongly agree with. It doesn't get rid of the entire problem, but it does eliminate a very significant chunk of it. We've seen what they did to try and get people back into the old raids in terms of that boss of the week thing, but that is horribly stupid. And it really is bad. I think because of the way that TBC raids were actually structured, people were more willing to go back to them because they weren't as long. And often you could actually pick and choose bosses. The bosses weren't so incredibly linear. You know, if you want to talk about linear bosses, you need only look at stuff like ICC and TOC. Old War did have some non-linearity to it into which boss you can actually pick first. But there's still, you know, you've still got to go through. XT002 has to die. The Flame Leviathan has to die. Whoever his name was, the guy who began with a K, whose name now escapes me, the big Iron Construct guy, that had to die. You had to kill him. You know, you had to kill all the 4 keepers to get access to Yogg-Saron and things like that. So you didn't really have all that much of a choice. You had to kill Aurelia as well. She had to die. So, and then you've got to look at the fact that the dungeon is so freaking enormous. So, back in the days with TBC and stuff like that, you could actually justify running the dungeons that were sub-tier for 2 reasons. One, they were really, really, really short if you knew what you were doing with them. Like, you could plow through TK in an hour. Yeah, because it had 4 bosses, it didn't have a huge amount of trash. If you didn't screw up, you could just blast your way through it. Serpent Try, you could do some of that as well. So, people were going back to that, and the second reason was because you actually... Yes, Rena, thank you, we know that you didn't have to kill Ignis or raise the scale. This is why I said we didn't have... You know, I shouldn't read the IRC during shows, but sometimes people come up with sillier stuff. It's like, yeah, I know this, I said that! Also, you really kind of did have to kill Aurelia, honestly. Avoiding Aurelia was such a pain in the ass, and you know it. It was totally impractical just not to get rid of him. Or her. Or it, indeed. Anyway. The other reason was because there was actually gear worth having in there, and because there was some diversity of gear. I think, actually, this is something that, unless Blizzard diversifies in Cataclysm, is going to get really, really bad. And the reason for that is that the gear is now almost identical across the board. It's so similar. There's so little variety in terms of stats. You know, back in the day, it was possible to go and get, say, gear off of Vash that was basically better than everything else in Tier 6 up until, like, very, very late in it. You know, Vash's robe, for instance, was one of the best robes in the game. And people would go back and kill that boss for that item. Not so much of that in Wrath. Indeed, not enough of it to make people go back into those dungeons. So, it's not a simple problem, which means it doesn't have a simple solution either. There are a large combination of different factors that weigh into this kind of thing. Because there's not just one reason for people not going back to previous dungeon encounters. The badge system is a large contributing factor, but it is not the only factor. So, yeah, it is a really difficult subject that I do think Blizzard does have to tackle beyond simply saying, oh, right, you got to this point, well, here's the gear from the previous dungeon, you don't have to go back and ever do it ever again. It's unfortunate. they do need to work on that. There is a lot of work still to be done, and hopefully they will eventually come around to the way of thinking that, yes, all of their raid content should be accessible, and it should be accessible by people who have the necessary determination to go and do it, and it should be desirable to do it. You can get to the point where if you are a very experienced raiding guild, you will not have to go back and do that, and that's totally fine, and that was actually the way it was in TBC. You had those advanced guilds never even bothering going back to the old dungeons except on selling runs, using the gold DKP system, i.e. selling items to people from other guilds or loners and people who just didn't have a guild or just didn't have the time to get this stuff. But a lot of the guilds that I saw, and indeed ones that I were in, were ones that did go back to stuff like SSC and TK because those items were still worth having. And indeed because they weren't laying on so much stuff, you weren't drowning in loot and everything wasn't tokens and crap like that, then yeah, it was highly desirable to go back there and pick up stuff like that. And tier pieces these days are so easy to actually get, and they're often so good as well. I remember back in the day, I keep saying that, when actually tier pieces were often not that great, and that going non-tiered was a pretty good idea for a lot of classes. Not so much anymore. They've made it so tier sets are really the right way to do things, and there might be one piece that you can replace, but hey. I think it's probably time for shout-outs, folks, isn't it? Let's do it. Email in to themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com with your shout-outs. Or you can PM me over IRC, irc.quakenet.org, #CynicalBrit. My name is, of course, TotalBiscuit on there. And if you wish, you can drop me a tweet. I will do that as well. Next few minutes of the show, folks. Shout-outs, and then we shall end. Like I said before, I'm going to be working on another WoW video tonight. It is going to start off a Stone Talent leveling series, which I'm hoping people will very much enjoy. It is a good set of quests. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. It's a really cool zone. And I'll be looking to kick off Azeroth Daily within the next few days on the site once everything's sorted out. And I think you're going to enjoy that, or at least hopefully get a lot of information out of it. Send them in, folks. IRC via PM, please. PM. Shout out to Ninja Bear. Happy birthday, even though you missed it 2 weeks ago. That's from the Majin Trunks. A shout out to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the first raiding division of Trollface, and everyone who's signed up for it. We're going to kick RC Cataclysm. Yes, indeed. One of many raiding divisions. I would like a shout out to my guild Lucid on Bone Chew US. That's from Derp. Giving Polyphony Digital for finally releasing Gran Turismo 5. That's from Arena. I bet it's not like great, though. A shout out to Malvok, Arcane, and Secret Avatar, and to the traitor Secondax. That's from Nefarious. Ironic, really, that Nefarious will claim someone else was a traitor. A shout out to Day9's computer for having a reset on kick feature. That's from Ralph. Oh, dear. Dun. Yeah, we were all sort of laughing at the time, but that was actually really, really horrible, and I would never wish that on anybody. Yeah. That's the kind of time where you need someone to get up and give some kind of grand speech to entertain the crowd, but for some reason it didn't happen. A shout out to me for getting my sunflower pet, despite all the annoying bugs. Sunflowers for the win, that's from Rogue Ganker. A shout out to Sapphire, Zadkiel, and the rest of Queen's Blade on Cult Harass. Can I also get a shout out to Slippers for ice-blocking multiple raids on Tindragoza? That's from Bobby Swagger. A shout out to the guys you done Star Battles on StarCraft 2 with. Yes, Ashbringer. We did a bit of a pub stomp earlier. That game usually lasts about 35 minutes. We ended it in 12. Yes. Yeah, pub stomping in that game is imbalanced. When the time comes, I'd like to give you a shout out to Bathed in Blood on Terracar. That's from Challenge. A shout out to the last week of Wrath. May it never darken our computers again. That is from Faust. And a shout out to Arthurs on the Maelstrom EU for beating the world record in Robot Unicorn Attack. That's from Donkatire? Yes, Donkatire by the looks of it. A shout out to Room Dogs, my guild from Arthur's server, that's from Morgile. And a shout out to my new guild, Opso Ordo Novus, on Garona US. Old friends hanging out together again, that's from Zeza. And a shout out to Terranus EU, Horny Angel, Islandi, and Blade Mage. That is from Aaron Knowles. A shout out to the Warlords of Oblivion and Karazhan EU from Cowtree, the level 80 Resto Druid. A shout out to Project, Azura, Asp, Tyler Terrible, Tyanin, Gotha, Serve, Chewed, Yowza, Naboo, and my love Axerend. That's from Ryanhead. Jesus. Getting a shout out to Zanturi for being well on his way to becoming a great animator, and a shout out to Rhapsody of Fire on Bloodstock 2011. Yes, indeed. And a shout out to Aurelian on Bleeding Hollow, the greatest priest I know, my best friend, that's from Imralia. And a shout out to my brother Trankbar for getting his mage level to 80 finally, that is from Laced. And one more, a shout out to Steam for bridging the gap until Cataclysm by selling everything at stupid prices, that's from Salix. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm done for the evening. Thank you very much. You have, as always, been an awesome audience. I will see you next Friday, which is the 3rd of December. The same time, the same place, the same channel, right here on cynicalbrit.com. I'm going to go out on one more track from Machinae Supremacy. Why would I not? The name of this track is Rocket Dragon. And why not? My name is TotalBiscuit. Check out the rest of my videos over at youtube.com/TotalHalibut. Thank you to those who donated. That is very much appreciated. That goes in the tip jar. Indeed, I have my new headset on its way. Thanks to that. Oh yeah, it's going to be killer, folks. I can guarantee it. Yes, indeed, folks. Blue Please will be cast on the same headset used by the WWE Wrestling Federation. Oh yeah. That's going to be enjoyable. If it's good enough for Jerry the King Lawler, it's good enough for me. I'm out of here. Machinae Supremacy Rocket Dragon from their latest album, A View from the End of the World. Buy it on Amazon, iTunes, or wherever the hell, because it's amazing. Every track is a stunner. Good night. You have been listening to the podcast and archive of Blue Please, WoW's #1 shock jock show, only on cynicalbrit.com. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment on the